By late 2025, Operation Southern Spear signaled a historic shift in regional security. Following a maritime campaign involving over 100 strikes, the U.S. formally reclassified the crisis as an armed conflict. This paved the way for a massive military buildup and a controversial land strike inside Venezuela, marking a profound escalation in the war against transnational cartels.
So, back in late 2025, the Caribbean Sea suddenly became the stage for one of the biggest U.S. military deployments we've seen in decades. It was called Operation Southern Spear, and what started out with a pretty clear stated mission, well, it turned into something way more complicated and ended up sparking a major international crisis. Okay, let's get into it.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? The official answer seems simple enough. But as we're about to see, the actions that followed painted a much more complex picture. And it got a lot of people wondering what the real objectives were behind this massive military buildup.
So, how did we even get here? To really understand why warships were suddenly steaming south, we've got to rewind a bit and look at the political moves and legal groundwork being laid in Washington.
Okay, look at this timeline. What's wild is just how fast this all happened. It all kicked off in January with an executive order that let the government label drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Then, by July, the focus narrows, and it narrows right in on Venezuela. The U.S. slaps a terrorist designation on something called the Cartel of the Suns. That's a name for allegedly corrupt Venezuelan officials in the drug trade. And at the same time, they double the reward for President Maduro's capture. And then, bam, just 1 month later, the warships start moving.
So, on paper, the official story was pretty straightforward. This was a new chapter in the war on drugs. By legally rebranding cartels as narco-terrorists, the U.S. government basically gave itself the green light to use military force. The argument was, hey, we have to do this to stop the flow of drugs poisoning America. But, a lot of people were looking at the laser focus on Venezuela and thinking, is that really all this is about?
So, with the mission officially defined, the operation was a go. But the sheer size of the force they sent right out of the gate, it immediately told everyone this was no ordinary anti-drug mission. Just take a second to let these numbers sink in. We are not talking about a couple of Coast Guard cutters here. This was a 10-ship naval force, led by the USS Iwo Jima. That's an amphibious assault ship, basically a mini aircraft carrier that can land thousands of Marines ashore. You've got destroyers, a nuclear submarine, and some of the most advanced aircraft, like F-35s and Reaper drones. And maybe the biggest tell? A secretive special operations ship. This wasn't a patrol. This was a full-on military task force, way more than you'd ever need for just stopping drug boats.
And if there was any doubt that this was serious business, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth cleared that right up. He told the troops in Puerto Rico point blank, this is not a drill. It is a real-world exercise. And that real-world exercise turned deadly fast. The first strike went down on September 2nd. U.S. forces found a boat they said was run by the Tren de Aragua gang, and they sank it. 11 people were killed.
Then, less than 2 weeks later, another strike. 3 more people killed. And again, on September 19th, a third strike killed another 3. This time we heard the Dominican Navy was involved, and they pulled a big cocaine shipment from the water. So in just a little over 2 weeks, this operation had already left 17 people dead.
But these first few strikes, they were really just the opening act. The operation was about to get a whole lot bigger, and it was about to shift from a fight at sea to a conflict that was inching closer and closer to land. And this right here just lays it out perfectly. Look at the difference. What they said it was, combating drug trafficking at sea, versus what it became, seizing oil tankers, setting up a naval quarantine, and, striking targets on the land itself.
So, you might be asking, how could they legally do all this? Well, it all came down to a key legal move on October 1st. The administration declared a non-international armed conflict. Now that sounds like a bunch of legal jargon, but it's a huge deal. It meant they could now call cartel members unlawful combatants, a term straight out of the War on Terror. And it meant the military could use deadly force on them, even if they weren't an immediate threat.
And the military muscle just kept on coming. In November, things got kicked up to a whole new level. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the biggest, baddest aircraft carrier on the planet, sailed into the region.
You don't send a supercarrier unless you're trying to send a very, very loud message.
And with the fort and its whole entourage, the number of U.S. personnel in the area just ballooned to a staggering 15,000. To put that into perspective, that's the largest American military deployment in the Caribbean for something that wasn't hurricane relief since the intervention in Haiti back in 1994.
And then came December, and this is when they crossed a major line. For the first time, the conflict moved from the open sea to sovereign territory. A U.S. strike hit a port facility inside Venezuela, and at that moment, the stakes of this whole crisis just skyrocketed.
As you can imagine, the world was watching all of this unfold, and people had a lot of different opinions. The U.S. actions basically split the international community right down the middle, creating some strange bedfellows and making old rivalries even deeper.
This slide gives you a great snapshot of how divided the world was. Obviously, Venezuela condemned the whole thing and started running its own military drills. Most other Latin American countries were very worried, but some key U.S. allies in the area, like Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, were on board. Meanwhile, you had America's big global rivals, Russia, China, Iran, all lining up to call the operation provocative and illegal.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question at the heart of this whole thing. Was this really about stopping drug smugglers, or was there a much bigger geopolitical game being played here?
And the sources really lay out two completely different stories. You have the official U.S. line, which was all about fighting narco-terrorism. But then you have what many experts, and even some people inside the administration were saying, that this was really a maximum pressure campaign designed to do one thing: force regime change in Venezuela and get President Maduro out of power.
And this is a great take from former Navy Admiral James Stavridis, someone who knows a thing or two about naval power. He just called it what he saw: gunboat diplomacy. Basically using this massive military force as a threat to try and break the Venezuelan government, with the whole anti-drug thing as a convenient excuse.
But maybe the most telling comment, the real smoking gun, if you will, reportedly came from deep inside the White House. The Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, was quoted saying the plan was to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle. It's pretty hard to misinterpret the goal there.
So, in the end, what was this all about? Was Operation Southern Spear a genuine, if very aggressive, new chapter in the long war on drugs? Or was it a playbook for a new kind of 21st century intervention, one that uses the language of fighting drugs and terror to actually go after geopolitical goals like regime change? That's the question this crisis leaves us all to think about.